Hello to everyone joining us. We are going to get started in about 2 minutes. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to everyone joining us. We're going to get started in about a minute here. If you want to hop in the chat, introduce yourself, that would be awesome. Like I said, we'll get started in about a minute. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our next installment of Visionary Voices. Before we get started today, I just want to take a quick moment to recognize our sponsor, First Business Bank. For those of you who may be joining us from chapters, First Business Bank has been a great partner to ATSA and our chapters and providing them with some really great interest rates and some opportunities to save some money. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. My name is Amber Schroeder. I'm the Executive Director of ATSA. We are super excited to have our next visionary voice today with us, who is Dr. Phil Rich. And as he comes on screen, I know he needs no introduction, but Phil has been involved in ATSA for a super long time, and we appreciate everything he does and taking time off of his vacation to be with us today. Welcome, Phil.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me to do this. I appreciate it. And I'm honored. So thank you.
Thank you. We like to start this conversation off with the same question for all of our visionary voices, which is, how does it feel to be a visionary voice?
Well, it really doesn't. I just feel like me, as I said to you just before. I'm honored. I'm glad that I'm glad that the work that I've done over the years is being reflected today in the sense of I think, being honored with that title. I feel like I've just done what I thought was the right thing to do over the years, and maybe thought a little bit outside of the box. Certainly, people have said that to me, not quite in that way, but it feels nice to be considered that. But again, I just feel like me. I just feel like I just did what I did.
I think one of the reasons that so many consider you a visionary voice in this field is because of the way that you have mentored and supported folks along the way. Can you share with us why that was important to you and how you went about it?
Yeah, yeah. I've been doing this sort of human service work. I got my MSW in 1979, and I was doing this work prior to that. So I've been working for a long time with people, and initially it was because I felt like that's what I would have liked in my life. I would have liked someone to be there for me. And with the advent of things like the internet and email, where it became easier and easier to contact people instead of having to write letters to people, I always appreciated when the people I did write to or I try to get back to would actually get back to me. I wanted to be the kind of person that I wanted to be able to contact myself if I needed help or support, which sometimes was not the case. You didn't get responses, or you got kind of responses that were a little bit on the snotty side. But on the other hand, there were a lot of people who really were there. So it's the kind of the golden rule. It's be unto others as you would have others be unto you. So um, I, I don't want to sound too corny, but one of my goals in life is to be helpful to people, because I would like people to have been helpful to me, and I appreciate all the help and support I got in my entire career, going all the way back. And even as a younger person, I've always been involved with young people, first as a young person in youth organizations, and then bit by bit, just kind of assuming the role of youth leader, and then going on to become a professional. So I just want to be, if I have something that I can share with people, I'm happy to share it with people. And I've been over the years, um, I'm not sure flattered is the right word, but appreciative of the fact that people, there's stuff they want me to share with them. So I appreciate that. And I feel that there's a responsibility involved in that. So I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's really the reason. I want to be the kind of person I wish other people would be and have been in my life.
So we often hear from students involved in ATSA that they're intimidated or nervous to approach some of our visionary voices or legends in the field. What would you tell to students as they're starting out and sort of working through those moments of anxiety?
Well, ultimately, I'd say approach that person. I mean, one of the beautiful things about the conference and other similar regional conferences is those people are right there. And it's true, sometimes they're caught up with their own group because they know people, they're friends, so it's difficult to kind of just break in, but find an opportunity to introduce yourself to, uh, I think that most people, if not, maybe not everybody, but almost everybody, people are accessible, people are open, people are just people, so I would say you find opportunities to approach them. Even email or text them if you can ahead of time and make a time to meet them. That's often what's worked for me, is that I've either done that in terms of setting up something ahead of time, or when people have responded, have texted me or emailed me, made a time to meet. But I'd say find a way to, if you can, to get past that kind of anxiety, recognizing that almost all of those people that you think about or you admire or you'd like to connect with, they're just like you. They're just a little bit maybe older and a little bit more experienced, but they're in the field of human services, so they're in a place to offer help and support. So I'd say find a way to approach them, and it's hard to overcome anxiety, but try to overcome that kind of anxiety and recognize that people are just people, and that's true, certainly. And looking back at the past three visionary voices, you can see from those three that they're just people, and it clearly comes across that way. Ray, Franca, Carl, they're open, they're warm, they're just people, and they're happy to help. I think that's part of being. In fact, I think one of the things about ATSA is, at least in my experience, is that people are really open to helping, and people are available.
Awesome. I think that's great advice. So, Phil, I think that it's safe to say that you are a pioneer in treating youth with problematic sexual behaviors. Can you tell us how you got started in this work and what made you decide to move into this field?
Okay, so I've been working with young people, non-troubled and troubled, for quite a long time before, and that included increasingly over the years, kids with sexual behavior problems of one kind or another, but there was no specialized treatment. There was no, it was just something that we kind of recognized as a particular aspect of their behavioral history. And so I'd had those experiences, but also found that there really weren't very many resources out there. You had to sort of figure it out on your own. And then in the late 90s, I started working with a program that had switched from being a residential program that worked with generally troubled kids, had switched, and really was the first program in Massachusetts to switch to working solely with kids with sexual behavioral problems, adolescents and younger kids, pre-adolescents. And that was a time where it really, that I suppose you could say subspecialization was really, there wasn't much of it. It was just beginning. There weren't a lot of materials. So I was fortunate enough to kind of get there at a time where the field and that program in particular was looking for new ideas, looking for ways to do the work, looking for ways to develop an expertise and an understanding, and offered me kind of unbridled opportunities to bring my own kind of ideas into this. I took that job in particular because when I went for the interview, they've been building all these new facilities that were really kind of custom tailored for the kind of clients that they wanted to work with. And I remember thinking, this is fantastic in that they're really serious about the kind of work they're doing. And so I made that jump from working sort of generally, if you will, with troubled kids and families, troubled young adults, to working solely. And the opportunities to help kids and the opportunities to learn and the opportunities to give feedback and add something to the field, it was just a great opportunity. And I realized very quickly, I sort of knew this from before, as I had worked with kids with sexual behavior problems, but again, in more general settings, I learned pretty quickly, they're just kids. There's nothing, they're just troubled kids. And every troubled kid's got his or her own troubles in their own particular way. They're just kids and who need help and who need us to overlook that kind of title. And of course, the field has changed a great deal from the labels that we use now. I saw it as an opportunity to be part of something, to add to something, to learn, and to help young people who they might not get the right kind of help in other kind of settings. So but that particular program where I stayed for a long time, it was the fact that they were so committed to doing that kind of work to the degree that they were actually investing millions of dollars into construction to work with the population that they thought needed a particular kind of environment to live within. So, and it was a decision. I like to think it was great for the program. It was definitely great for me. That was it. I had an opportunity there to really learn about the field and take that learning and put it into application. And that's what I did. It was a great place to be.
For sure. So certainly when you started this work, the field was much more focused on working with adults and not as much was out in working with juveniles. How did you approach that in thinking about how to translate what we knew about adults to working with juveniles or youth who are much different and have different needs?
Yeah. Well, I've been working with kids my whole life, from being a kid, as I said, and then sort of stepping out to become a youth leader, and then a professional, youth care worker, to then ultimately becoming a social worker. I always knew kids were different than adults. And I also believed and continue to believe that the work is about relationships. And that's true, of course, with adults as well as young people, but the work's about relationships. Building relationships with young people is different than working with adults. I used to be, in my prior life, I was a street outreach worker for a while. In fact, my master's thesis was on street outreach work with young people. And so who were often troubled and difficult to reach kids. So I very quickly thought, I wanted to learn as much as I could about the adult field. And there wasn't that much about the juvenile field. And a lot of it was what we used to call kind of trickle down. It's sort of like they're just younger versions of adults. And I knew that wasn't true from my own experience as a kid, as well as working with young people. And so just kind of work to develop our own instrumentation, our own way of trying to make sense of the sexual behavior problems that weren't just replica, that were informed by, but not simply replicas or dumbed down or versions of the adult world. And really the idea of working with kids as young people who are in development, who are looking for, you mentioned the word mentor before, but perhaps they don't know they're looking for mentors, but they're looking for mentors, they're looking for guidance, they're looking for love. Um, uh, they're looking to be appreciated. They're looking to grow up. And a lot of the problems that the kids that we work with have is that they're not quite sure how to grow up. And so they're engaged in behaviors that in some ways are misinformed efforts to grow up. And so working with adults is a different proposition. They're already grown up, although a lot of the same tenets apply. It's about relationships. It's about interactions. It's about authenticity in terms of, and it's about valuing the young people we work with. And again, although that's true for all of us of any age, I think it's especially true for, it's true for pre-adolescents, but I think it's especially true for adolescents who are, the process of adolescence is one of finding your way. And that transition between being a child and becoming a young adult. And so, I can tend to ramble with my answers. It's like I'm the Energizer Bunny, you switch me on and I just keep going. Hopefully I answered the question.
No, you're doing great, and it's helping me think too.
Yeah.
As you were talking, one of the things I was thinking about is what challenges did you run into over the years in this work? It's clear that you are humanizing the youth that you're working with and the children that you're working with. And we know that working in this field, that humanizing those who are at risk of causing sexual harm is not always easy. What challenges did you run into in doing that as you're working through systems and in this work?
Well, the dehumanization of those kids, that was one of those challenges. And also when I came in to specifically and solely into doing this kind of work, which was right around 1998, solely, and since that moment, just working with that population, it was also overcoming a model that was prevalent at that time, which again was kind of filtered down from the adult model of what we called and still call cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really not really quite cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a more of a psycho-ed version, but it was this version of you just have to teach information. Kids just have to learn this stuff. They just have to repeat it back. And they'll be okay, as opposed to an aspect where relationships are important, where what we now think of as the common factors of therapy, the therapeutic relationship, instilling hope, creating a mindset in young people and in their families where they can themselves feel like they can succeed and they can be effective. I think overcoming at that early point, overcoming this kind of rigid thinking that was falling into place. I remember that there was an article many years ago by Mark Chaffin, who was I can't think of his, Barbara Bonner, I'm sorry. She was the co-author. That was talking already in the early 2000s about how we'd already, even though the field wasn't that old, we've already started to develop dogma in our thinking and trying to overcoming dogma. I think the article, kind of pointed out, I think it was actually called something like, these are our children. And so overcoming that kind of idea that this is the way to do it, which I don't think worked particularly well with adults at that time, but it certainly didn't, that rigid kind of thinking. And then over the years, overcoming the idea that these are really dangerous kids. Some of them are, but hardly any. And that's true also for the adults we work with. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. Most of them are looking to lead a good life, and most of their families want them to have a good life, and they want their kids to succeed. And so overcoming that idea that you have to somehow fear these kids, or that if they did that, they're going to do that again, and then everything else they do being seen through those eyes, like, well, that's pathological, when actually, that's just teenager. So overcoming that idea that somehow having a sexual behavior problem or engaging in sexually harmful behavior somehow tainted your entire being as a young person. So overcoming that, helping clinicians and others to feel comfortable with the young people that we're working with, given the delicate material that we're often discussing with those kids. I've never really had the problem that I know lots of other people have had where people look at me and say, what? You do that kind of work? I've really never had that problem. Once in a while. Mostly people were always interested in learning more about it. But certainly overcoming these I think misperceptions about ideas. And those misperceptions, unfortunately, create more difficulty for the very people that we're trying to help. And I've seen those changes come over the years. And I'm happy to have been part of that, I hope, at least a little bit.
Yeah.
And the other is understanding and integrating the research. I want to be careful here, but not taking the research too seriously. So I want to be careful. I've made a point in really, for many years, reading everything that's come out. I've kind of backed off from that a little bit because I am recently retired. But so I'm glad to be able to step back from that a little bit. But in understanding and making sense and trying to integrate all of that literature, drawing from it our understanding that this is research, this is going to inform us, this is going to help us in our thinking, but this isn't practice. So integrating clinical practice with research and that idea of evidence-based practice, finding the alternative as well, which is practice-based research or practice-based evidence, and integrating those two. So recognizing that often that piece of research has sort of an anti-piece of research that says something very different. Integrating those things and making sure that the research guides us, shapes our thinking, adds incremental knowledge, but that ultimately it's doing the work that requires the application of those ideas and developing a mindset in which you can think critically about those ideas and not just accept them. Going back again to the Chaffin and Barnett article, not just accepting the ideas, but making sense of them for yourself, and or looking to your colleagues or your mentors or your supervisors to see what they think about the research. For years, to use an example, the research on denial as a risk factor or not, start over the years hearing people, make these kind of flat out statements that were supported to some degree by the research, but didn't show a really deep understanding of the research, but accepting these kind of fixed ideas without thinking further. So I think that part of my approach is using research, depending on research, seeing research as a guiding kind of beacon, but recognizing the real work is in the field, which is why I'm a clinician.
So as you're chatting, one thing that strikes me is that you are incredibly passionate about your work. You've been doing this, as you say, since 1998. How do you maintain that edge and passion for the work that you are doing?
Can you repeat that last thing? I just gulping
No, it's
water.
okay. How do you maintain that edge and passion
Oh,
for the work that you're doing?
it's just the way I am. I mean, the things that I do, the reason that over the years, the things that I've done, besides this kind of work that I've been good at, is because I like it. It's interesting to me. And for me, the only way to really, in the most honest way, engage in the work is to know as much about it as possible. It's like working on a car engine. You really need to know everything about engines to be able to work on that bit. Otherwise, you're kind of working with a blindfold on. And so I tend to throw myself into things because I like the things that I do, and I want to know as much as I can because they'll help me to do those things and engage in them more. I used to describe, because some people would describe me as a workaholic, and which I never felt about myself, but I would instead say, well, work is my hobby. And that's kind of how I feel. I love the work. I love working with people. It's just me. I get caught up in the stuff I do, and I take it really seriously. And at one point, that program I worked with was interested in doing some work with arson as well, fire setters, and I felt I can't do that. The only way I can do that is to learn all about that. And I was too busy learning all about this in order to do that. And so that's it. It's just who I am. And, uh, I don't think of myself as a high energy guy, but I know that people over the years have thought of me that way. I just um, I tend to get and like to get fully involved in what I do, and I think that's for me the best and only way to kind of move forward. Otherwise, I feel like I'm really again working with a blindfold on, or at least the mask on that I can't see fully. I want to be able to see everything around me, and the only way to do that is to throw yourself into it fully. It's not for everybody, though, I know.
So how do you, as you're navigating these things and you're putting out this great research and putting it into practice, how do you continually examine your own bias and ensure that you're pushing forward and not being complacent?
Well, by hearing what other people have to say, either directly to me or just in the field, by reading the research, by reading other people's ideas, by keeping an open mind. I mean, again, this stuff always sounds corny, but it's true. By keeping an open mind, by ensuring that I don't get so fixed in my own ideas and my own importance and my own correctness that I'm lucky enough, and maybe unlucky enough, my entire life to have taken a lot of criticism ever since I was a young kid for me, for being who I am, so to speak. And the lucky part of that is I learned very young to hear it and to accept it and not to reject it and not to be defensive about it and recognize that some of that criticism may be unfair. Some of it is fair, and some of it is very fair. And so listening to that kind of critical feedback, as long as it's not intended to hurt and damage and kind of cut you down. So hearing what other people have to say in various forms, whether it's in a newspaper column or a piece of research or at a conference or being challenged, and continuing to read people's ideas so that I'm not caught up in my own world of ideas. So that's it.
This is a great answer. One thing I'm really curious about as you're working with youth is since, from 1998 until maybe the last, 2022, when you started moving more into retirement, how did technology impact your work? The internet,
Oh, it's great.
email?
You got a worldwide community now, and it could be just at your doorstep. Uh, Having the ability to not just access other people's ideas and information and thoughts and be able to talk to people that you want to be able to talk to, but building relationships, building not just collegial relationships, but relationships that go beyond that become really networks of collegial friends. So having access to the world, being able to share ideas, being able to ask questions. I mean, that's been it's the thing that's taken us out of being an insulated group of people just working in our own practice, our own programs, to being part of a again, without meaning to sound corny, being part of a global community. It's hard to imagine how things would be without. We'd be all isolated. We'd see each other at conferences once a year, and that would be it. We'd write letters to each other. We'd make phone calls. It's changed everything. It's also made available a world of literature. I remember, I don't know how many years ago it was now, when ATSA decided it was going to stop publishing the journal and publish it electronically. And I, among others, were outraged. We want our paper journals. Who needs a paper journal now? I mean, that was really, in fact, ATSA went back immediately to publishing the journal. But the reality is ATSA really had great foresight at that point, because I don't remember the last time I've actually looked at a paper journal. Everything is available online. You have to pay money for it sometimes if you don't have a subscription to that. So that's another example. Being able to see things like this, being able to go into YouTube and watch, interesting videos, being able to do training online. I mean, the world has become a very small place in a very positive way because of electronics. And in addition to that, it helps with creating, whether they're assessment tools or treatment tools that you can access online and you can use online. So everything has changed. I dread the day that the internet shuts down. I don't know what we're gonna have. We're gonna have to go back to reinventing fire. It's been everything. It's made the world an easier place to access.
How has it impacted treatment for youth?
Well, I mean, for one of the things it's done is, I mean, the pandemic really, you can't remove that from the electronic world, because for those 2 years plus, everything was online, or much was online. And so we learned that you could kind of reach and connect with people, whether it's for therapy or assessment or for any other reason, just kind of family meetings. Or You could do all that online. It doesn't make up for being in the room with the person, I don't think, but it's not too far behind. So I think in that sense, it's really been a tremendous boon for young people. Otherwise, again, I mean, over the years, using the internet to bring in stuff that I and clinicians I work with could show young people.
Yeah.
It's opened up the world for them as well. It's allowed treatment to go beyond just me and the client or the program and the client, but to bring in the rest of the world into that, to find interesting and useful things on the internet that are useful to their own treatment. I think, of course, the other end of that is it's also brought tremendous risks to young people through social media, which, unsurprisingly, the commercial world hasn't really paid attention to. They're just happy to kind of make money from it. But now increasingly you might pay more and more attention to the negative effects and the dangers of the internet. So you've got that other side as well. Hopefully, those young people that we're working with, we can help them to find ways to negotiate the electronic world, whether it be social media or other forms of the online world, so that they can get from it the most without yielding to the harm that it might cause them or others.
Great answer. We have a question from our audience, and that is, do you see yourself writing another book in retirement or presenting again at ATSA conference? Your vast knowledge is so valuable to those in the field.
No. The book, I wrote a lot, and for the last few years, I've been, my wife became ill, and increasingly, and so that took up more and more of my time and more and more of my energy. I didn't have time, and more and more I shifted to really becoming a full-time 100% caregiver. I recently wrote a fairly extensive chapter that I kind of had committed to, and I really enjoyed writing it, and I really threw myself into it, and it really got much longer than I thought it was going to be. But it reminded me of how much I love writing. I've been a writer my whole life. My daughter's a writer too. So there's a natural kind of piece to that. It's just something we were always good at. I love writing, and I love the process of learning and taking that information and adding my own thoughts to it and then putting it down. But it also reminded me how difficult it is, particularly when it involves research, because it means knowing the research. It means having in one of the books that I wrote, I believe I had a 50-page bibliography. It means throwing yourself into it, and that I at this point I can't see going back there. As I said, when I wrote that chapter, that was sort of my last hurrah. I'm not really sure if it is going to be my last hurrah, but that was my thinking. And in terms of presenting, I think that the only things that I really want to do now are things like this, where I can just talk instead of having to prepare. I spent so many years preparing, and it's sort of like getting out of the cold water and then drying off, and then you think, I got to get back in the cold water. That's the best analogy I can think of. I don't see doing that. I think at this point, things have changed for me in the last, really 4 years in terms of my own mindset. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be doing now. I'm sort of on a bit of a voyage of discovery at the moment, because my wife did pass. So I'm trying to figure out what to now. So I don't know, but I don't see myself kind of going back to presenting again, unless somebody just says, "Hey, let's just do a question and answer." That would be great. It's all up here. Yeah. So I might write other stuff. However, I'm interested in writing some science fiction. So who knows?
Who knows is right. One of the things that I was struck by when I was reviewing your CV, preparing for this chat, is how involved you were in a ton of organizations. Why get involved like that? Why commit to that?
People asked. I don't. That doesn't sound quite exactly right, but people asked, and the work. This is honorable work. I mean, this sort of work in general is it's a very honorable way to kind of have a career. It's good, and so when people ask, I want to as long as I can, and as long as I'm able, I kind of want to be part of it. So I think that that's probably the primary reason is that I was invited to do these things. And I, I'm not quite sure this is quite the right way of saying it, but I always felt, well, I needed to do that because people asked me to do it. And unless there was a reason not to do it or I couldn't do it, I did it. And then like anything else, when I get involved, I tend to get involved. But I, I think that's the primary reason I was asked. And the golden rule is, be unto others as you would like them to be unto you. So that's why. And they all, I hope that I added to those organizations, but I also benefited a great deal from being part of those things, including, again, developing a field of colleagues and friends who have become close. Right now I'm at Tom Levacy's house, who some of you will know because I'm traveling around the country. Tom's just on the other side of that door. I wouldn't know Tom if it wasn't for, I needed to be here, so I had an internet connection. I wouldn't know Tom if it wasn't for these kind of organizations and the things that I've been part of. So I don't want to sound corny, but I feel blessed to have been part of these organizations and to have been asked. So I'm a lucky guy.
Love it. What are you most proud of in your career?
Well, being called a visionary voice is something to be proud of. I worked at Stetson School for I think 13 or 14 years as a clinical director, and I'd never had a job that long, not even close to that long. I'd always be around a couple of years, 3 years, then I kind of move on. And over that much time, I matured in a way that I never thought I could. I don't mean emotionally, well, that's true too, but in terms of my work and as being a clinical director of a large program with a lot of clinicians, um, I wouldn't normally use the word proud to describe about myself. I don't kind of usually think that way, but I using that word, I'm proud of what Stetson School became. I'm proud of my accomplishments there. I'm proud of what I got to add to the field. I can't say, I guess that would be, if there was one thing, it would be that block of time, which was just an immense period of time. And I'm also pleased with, maybe not proud, some of the materials I produced that other people have used that have been helpful. But I think I guess using it to I'm most proud of that block of 13 or 14 years and everything that happened in that time. And all the clinicians and case managers and stuff who went through that program, many of whom came out and themselves went on to really have pretty spectacular careers. I'm proud of all of that and being part of their being part of adding to this field, not just in terms of my own work, but the work of other people that I've had the opportunity to be engaged with. Some of whom are on, I can see are in the participant list today.
Awesome. So folks in the participants, if you have any questions, you're free to put them either in the chat or in the question answer. We're keeping an eye on those. As we're giving folks time to think about that, my last question for you, Phil, is my favorite one that we ask all of our visionary voices. And that's if you could wave a magic wand and do something to help eliminate sexual violence, what would it be?
Early social education from the beginning. I don't mean, when kids are 3 years old, but in some ways, yeah. Providing opportunities for young, not simply around sexual education, but really the process of engaging in the world, the process of building relationships, the process of being part of something. I think that from way back when I'd mentioned again, I was always involved with youth programs as a kid, voluntary youth programs. Having a place to go where you could grow. Actually, if I can just step back a moment. But in my past life, before the world of the treatment of sexual behavior problems, for a number of years I worked in a community-based youth program that was just a drop-in center. It's what you could call a youth center, although it was more than that, and it was very well funded. Things came together. It actually just turned 50, so it's been around a long time. That's also a place I'm very proud of because I was part of something that really built relationships with young people, genuine relationships, some of which have stayed. Some of those kids now are like they're 65. They're not kids anymore. They've been lifetime relationships that came from that place. It not only added something to the lives of kids, but it added something to the lives of the staff who work there as well. That was an accomplishment, and it kind of responds to this. It provided a place for young people to have older people around them, young adults themselves in many cases, who could help guide and mentor and counsel them and have them feel not so much that they're being valued by other people, but that they can value themselves. And so I think that that combination of helping children and teenagers to become healthy teenagers and young adults, and also teach about healthy relationships, including healthy and unhealthy sexual relationships, and finding other ways to accomplish things that we want to accomplish. That would change the world. And of course, we could apply that to almost everything, gun control, drug use, and treating it as a public health issue, which certainly has come up in the past, but I don't think it's ever really gone there, even though years ago, the Attorney General declared sexual abuse in this country as a public health issue. It's really never really kind of been treated that way. The public health model is one of treating the community first and the individual last, or the individual is a component of the community. So that would be my answer.
Great.
Changing our social structure.
Yep, it's a great answer. Got a couple of questions that came in. The first is, if you're going to supervise someone, how would you start the process?
Well, it depends on them in the sense of, are they new to the field? Are they experienced as, say, for instance, clinicians, but still new to this aspect of the work? Are they brand new as clinicians? What do they need? And so definitely a model of supervision that is situational. There is a model of supervision called situational supervision, which actually wasn't aimed for the human services, but it certainly can be used in the human services. And so for some people in their early supervisory process, they may need a lot of direction, a lot of being told, not being told what to do, but being given information. And at the other extreme would be really a consultation kind of model of supervision, where this person, they know a lot already. And it may in fact be the same person who's developed from being a brand new clinician to somebody who's more experienced. But so it's ensuring that we adjust our supervision to the needs of the individual. It's ensuring that we build a relationship, not because clinical supervision is sort of like therapy. And there are similar elements only in the sense that we build relationships, and the relationships must involve trust, and the relationships must involve a two-way valuing of one another. So learning what people need and finding a way to approach people in a way that it's like the R&R model that's responsive to their particular needs and supervision. And I have to say that I've had lots of supervisors, some of whom were really not very good. And I learned a lot from that. And a few who were really great. And I learned a lot from that. And some of those people, in fact, all of those people who were really good, they're in my mind all the time. They stayed with me. So I think ensuring that we gear our supervision around the needs of the people that we're supervising, and as much as we can, without going in planning to be a mentor, because that's a little bit kind of arrogant. Well, I'm going to be your mentor, but still trying to work toward that relationship. I haven't always been successful as a supervisor. I've had a lot of success, but those failures in supervision, they've also been very instrumental in helping me to understand more about supervision. And supervision has been something that has been near and dear to my heart. My doctorate was in barriers to provide, and that was what it was called, barriers to clinical supervision. So supervision has been very close to my heart. And again, because I throw myself into things, that was my dissertation subject, I tended to learn a lot about what people had written about supervision and really develop my own kind of model that worked for me, which I've just kind of, I think, kind of laid out. I mean, there's no more concrete kind of piece to it. It's about building relationships. It's about matching supervision to the style and the needs of the person. It's about not ramming things down their throat. But it is also about challenging and not being complacent as a supervisor. The idea is to move people toward their best without being arrogant about it, like somehow, well, you know more than them. Um, but it's moving people toward becoming, no matter how good they are already, becoming better.
Awesome. One more question that came in. What are the top three things you would tell a new clinician?
Learn. Well, some of the same stuff. And listen, build a relationship and listen to the people that you're working with. You listen to your clients. Seek supervision, whether it's peer supervision or through your supervisor. Play out your ideas and be open to different ideas, and don't be afraid of changing. And the third would be really like the people that you're working with, which is a difficult thing to do sometimes, but you got to do it. I mean, you find a way to like and enjoy the people that you work with, no matter who they are, and ensure that they know that you like and value them. And these are really actually, I mean, old ideas. These are not, they've come to me over the years through my own experiences, but they're old ideas. They're really ideas of humanist psychology and, you know, humanist mental health treatment. Being with the person in the room. If it's a group, being part of the group, being the leader of the group, but being engaged with the group. So like the people that you're with, value the people that you're with as clients, and ensure that they know that you value them. And maybe one more, the fourth is, and be honest. And not simply authentic in terms of who you are, but honest, where you're not sure. Think about changing your mind. Think about learning a little bit more and kind of coming back. Follow through on these kind of ideas. That would be the fourth. Follow through and consistency. Maybe that's the fifth.
I think that is all we have for questions, Phil. You've been a joy to chat with. I have loved getting to know you more. I'm sure that our audience has as well. Thank you for taking time from your vacation to chat with us today. We appreciate you and everything that you have done for both the field and ATSA.
Well, thank you. And again, thanks for inviting me to do this today. Really, I appreciate it. And I feel flattered. I don't know if flattered is quite the right word, but I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So thanks.
It's great.
And thank you to everybody out there who participated today.
It's been our honor. So thanks again to our sponsor today, who was First Business Bank. And thanks to Phil. And our next upcoming event will be conference. And that is, you can check that out at atsa.com. We're in San Antonio this year. And we look forward to seeing folks there. Have a great day, everyone.